We are in Parashat Bereishit, Tavshin Pei Daled, after the massive massacre that we've seen on Simchat Torah, and I wanted to make a little bit of a connection between the Parsha and what we saw, unfortunately, last week, that we are all suffering with day by day. But I think there's something very important to learn from the first Rashi, as we know the ever popular first Rashi in all of the Torah, the first Rashi in Chumash. Rashi over there brings the famous question of Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak asks that, of course, we know the Lashon of Torah is from Lashon Hara. It has to do with halacha. It's supposed to be teaching us halachot. The first halacha that we learn is Kiddush Levana. That's about 14 Parshiyot later. And Pitom here we start with a lot of stories. We start all of Sefer Bereishit and a little bit of Parashat Shemot, of Sefer Shemot together, with the ideas of learning Mesarim, ideas, concepts of creation of the world, etc., etc., is well familiar with. And he asks, what's the reason for that? Why don't we start with the idea of learning Torah, of learning what Torah is supposed to be about learning halacha, learning the dinim. So it says, Rabbi Yitzchak koach ma'isa v'gila amol letelem nachlet goyim, because he came to teach us an important lesson. 14 parshiyot of the Torah came to teach us one important lesson, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is coming to teach us nachlet goyim, that when the goyim come and inherit the land, and they come to tell us Umot Olam Yisrael, and they come to scream at us and say, Listim atem, you guys are a bunch of bandits, you took the land to yourselves, Shekavashtem eretz Umot, and you go ahead and they go ahead and they're willing to kill and murder you for the sake of trying to conquer this beautiful land, and they're doing it all because of that. So Mamela, we are able to answer them. Guess what? The land belongs none other than to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And he gave it to that who was befitting in his eyes. And Hashem decided to take it from you and give it to us. That's what we will answer to the Goyim. That will be the response. That's an ever popular Rashi that we're also familiar with. Over here the Ramban writes, and this is the Nakuda we want, this is the main Nakuda we want to speak out today, is that he says, Mishpar lelukim and lamisha yishmor chukav v'toratav. Those that keep his chukim, those that keep his Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided to give it to them, and therefore he threw out his enemies who don't do these things, who refuse to be makabel the Torah. Girish misham morda v'hishkin bo avadav, and therefore he put instead his oivdei Hashem. Sheyedu ki be'avodato yitlu yinchalu ve'im yichteu lo taki otam ha'aretz kasher ka'a goy asher lifneim. And if you keep to it and you keep to the rules, then it will not throw you out of the land. An incredible yesod from the Ramban, from Rashi, the idea that this land was given to us because it belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he's the one that gave it to us, which is a little bit of a question. Usually when you go and you tell them, well, the Torah says it belongs to us, that doesn't usually work. So what's the message behind this Rashi? What's it coming to teach us? What's the message of Rabbi Yitzchak coming to teach us? You're going to go with this Rashi to them and try to disprove them for everything they stand for? They don't believe in Rashi. They don't have anything to do with it. But the answer is in answering a contradiction, which is an important contradiction, which is resolved by many of the Chronim. Many of the psukim when we discuss Eretz Yisrael, and we see who lives in Eretz Yisrael, if it belongs to us, it says, you will receive this land. It belongs to you. This land is my land. That's it. It sounds like it belongs to us. When you come to this land, I'm going to give it to you. It belongs to you. All these lands belong to you. When you read many psukim, it sounds like this land actually belongs to us. We received Eretz Yisrael, belongs to the Jews, similar to what we just read from the Rashi. But mitzad sheni, but on the other hand, we find an interesting pasuk, because the pasuk says, Ki liya aretz in Parashat Bahar, Ki liya aretz ki gerim v'tor shavim atem imadi. The land is mine because you are gerim v'tor shavim imadi. You are nomads. You are living here on a temporary type of basis. You're gerim v'tor shavim, not necessarily that you own the land, but you're gerim. Says Rashi, listen to our Rashi, Perek Chaf Hey, pasuk Chaf Gimel, Parashat Bahar, Al terai necha bo, don't do anything to it, she'ena says Rashi, it does not belong to you. What happened? I just read Psukim that says it does belong to you. Says the Sforno on that same pasuk, even more than that. Listen to a beautiful Sforno. She'eretz Hashemu, the land of Eretz Yisrael belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki gerim v'toshavim atem imadi be'oto aretz. You are gerim, you're only nomads inside of this land. You are gerim in this land. Listen to the Lashon of the Sforno. She'ena bichlal ve'aretz natan livnei adam. Incredible Sforno. We all know the Hashamayim Shamayim LaHashem ve'aretz natan livnei adam. The pasuk that they said when they flew up in the skies in the space shuttle, they went up and they said the skies belong to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the arts belongs to Bnei Adam. Says the Sforno, there's one exception to this rule. When we say the arts belongs to Bnei Adam, it's the whole entire globe, the whole entire atlas, all belongs to the person, except for one place, little bit Eretz Yisrael, little itsy bitsy Eretz Yisrael. Kol ha'olam, that she'ena bichlal ve'aretz natan livnei adam, that was not given to us. As the Ramban writes in Parashat Bereishit in Perek Chavav, Shekara mekomot b'Torah, we know in many places in the Torah it's called Eretz Canaan. We know that Eretz Canaan is Eretz Yisrael, of course, that was what it was called before. But he says even after we were covered the Eretz, he points out a number of places where Eretz Yisrael is referred to as Eretz Canaan. He asks why? Why should it be? You should see the Shlah. The Shlah gives a response to this. Ramban, he says an incredible thing. Because even after we conquered the land, it's not ours. It's still, and it's not Canaan's, but the idea is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, don't think it's permanently yours, it's mine. It's yours, but it's really be'etzah mine. Similar to an Eved Kanani, Mashakana Eved Kana Rabbi. We are similar to an Eved, which is an Eved of a Goy, which is called an Eved Kanani, which is whatever we own belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Kanan, Miloshan Hachana, from humbling, from bending ourselves in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, meaning the ownership of this land is not necessarily what we thought, that we mamish own the piece of property that I'm sitting on right now. You bought a house and it's yours. It doesn't work like that. There's quite a difference, and the answer and the response to this whole idea is that there's two ways of living in a apartment, in a house, in a building. There's two different ways of doing it, as we all know. There's one way where I own the land. It's mine. I made a kinyan on it. I purchased it. It's mine and I own it, and therefore I feel that this is my property. There's another way of owning a private piece of land, and that's really with schirut. When you pay the rent, you're a good man. You're keeping to the chozeh, and you're paying with the rent. So by doing that, you own that piece of property for the time that you own it. There's two different ways. When I am living in Lakewood, when I'm living in Muncie, when I'm living in Los Angeles, when I'm living in Manchester, when I'm living in London, or when I'm living in Paris, or anywhere else in the world, I own the piece of property. I pay the bucks, I own the property, it's mine. As opposed to when I buy or purchase a place here in Eretz Yisrael, you are renting. You're here on Tanah, you're here on Schirut, you're here only with a lease. You don't own the piece of property. You are renting. Truth is, it's funny in this country, they have some type of thing like that. They only own it for 1,000 years. It's all right, I'm not so worried about that. Over here, it works with a type of rental property, as we know, and that means you only have a kinyan in the perot of the land. You don't have a kinyan in the actual kark of the land. You have a kinyan in the perot, in the fruits of the land. As we say in Al Michya, Hashem promises us, I'm going to bring you there to eat from the fruits, to enjoy the land, to be part of it. As we know, the pasuk in Yirmiyah says, I will bring you there to eat from the perot and the tova. Beautiful. We have a schut of using the land, of being here, but we never actually physically own it. On the oval, everything goes back. We never really have something of permanent shimush. We don't own it. So what difference does it make? What's this, a psychological test? What difference does it make if I own the land or if I don't own the land? I know that I brought the property here. There's no one coming and kicking me out. This is my piece of property. What's the difference if I own it or if I'm renting it? The answer is a very important, subtle difference. And that is, when I own a piece of property, I can do whatever I want in my own property. I can break walls, I can move things, I cannot pay, I can do whatever I want. It's my property, it belongs to me. But when you rent a property, that is what we call you're under chozeh, you're under contract. There are rules and regulations. You're not allowed to break a wall. You can't even put a nail in the wall without making sure you get permission from the balabait. You have limitations, there are rules. So whatever the rules of the contract says. And of course, first and foremost, you have to pay rent. You have to pay your dues. You have a monthly rent that you have to keep up to. If you don't, then you should know, if you don't keep up to your rent, then of course we know that the balabait has permission, and he will eventually, within a month or two, say, excuse me, sir, but you are out. You have not kept up to the chozeh, you're not keeping, and that's what it is. Ki gerim atem sham. We are gerim here. That's what we are. We're under rent. And if we don't keep to the rules and we don't pay our rent, so then the pasuk tells us, v'taki haaretz et yoshveha. The land will throw us out. We will not be able to survive here. We have to be able to keep, there's a certain rule book to keep by, and if it doesn't survive, then it's not so simple. Then it is somewhat of a problem. What does it say in the contract? What's written? What's the tashlumim? What's the payment plan that we're required to? We just read about it on Yom Kippur. Just a few days before, we read about it on Yom Kippur when we were reading the Parsha of Achrei Mot. Over there, as we all know, it says, Al titamu ta'aretz b'chol eila ki b'chol eila nitmu agoyim asher ani meshalech mipneichem. Don't be metamet aretz. The people that lived here, they have been metamet the land. They deserve to be thrown out. I don't want them here. You are the ones that are here. V'titma aretz v'efkod avona alea v'takia aretz v'shveya. To those who are metamet, and if you don't, and you don't treat it properly over here, it's referring to illicit relationships. But if you don't do what is necessary, then you are in trouble. The Ramban over there in the end of Parashat Bereishit says, asks the question. He says, arayot, doing illicit relations, that's what we call a mitzvah shebeguf, that has to do with a person. That's the actions of a person. That's a mitzvah on an individual body. That has nothing to do with mitzvahs tluyot ba'aretz. That has nothing to do with mitzvahs that have to do with the land. It would have made sense that because, like we know, the 70 years we were away from the land, we didn't keep Shemitah, which has to do with the land, so therefore we're thrown out of the land. So that makes sense because it's connected to the land. But what does this have to do with the land? Says the Ramban, an important yesod. Every land, every nation has his sar, has the malach that's on top of it. He has his mazal, it has his constellation, it has its horoscope, but it needs 70 nations, each one with their own mazal. Only one place has a direct connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's Eretz Yisrael. There's no mazal. Ein mazal Yisrael, and there's no star, there's nothing on top of us, only the Melech HaMelachim, Nachlet Hashem HaMiyuchedet Lo, that's the Nachlet that we get specifically for Kadosh Baruch Hu. He didn't give it to anybody else. We are, Eretz Yisrael is the Merkaz HaAretz, from here was created the world. The Even Shati, which is in the Kodesh Kodashim, was the place, the beginning of the creation of the land. V'hinchil Amo HaMiyuchedim Shmo Zera Oavav. And he gave it to a special nation, which are miyuchet for him. He gave it dafka to them, and they are the ones who are supposed to get it, and he did not give it to anybody else because they're the ones who keep his Torah. So even though it's a mitzvah on the goof, but that's why we're here. If you ever shechted a cow and you open up its stomach, there's 4 different stomachs there. There's a keva, there's a keres, there's a hamses, there's different stomachs inside of a cow, and it's incredible what can be contained inside of the stomach of this parah, of this animal. It can have sticks and stones. It can have all different types of twigs and even needles sometimes. And even once upon a time, they found an umbrella, believe it or not, inside one of the stomachs of one of these behemoth gases, in front of one of these behemoth. That's all good and dandy when it comes to an animal, but when it comes to a person, so then over there, they're on a much higher level, and therefore everything we eat is extremely subtle, we're extremely careful, and the stomach is extremely sensitive. Because when you're dealing with something on a different level, it's extremely sensitive. That's why these Arabs can eat anything. They can eat grass, they can eat anything, because they're less than an animal, they're nothing better than an animal, and that's why it works. But the higher a level something is, the more sensitive the stomach is. The Gemara says, shkotzim v'ramashim, that a non-Jew can eat shkotzim v'ramashim, and it doesn't affect him, but by us it does. Because everyone eats what's matim for his goof. And the more sensitive you are, as Rashi himself brings over there in the Psukim, and Ben Melech Maki Kol Davar Mos. Anything that's not matim, a prince can't handle it. It can't stay inside of his home. Ken Eretz Yisrael Eina Mekayemet Oiver Avera. So too Eretz Yisrael can't keep people who don't do things appropriately in this country. The Mila of Eretz Yisrael is a tremendous Mila. You're sitting with the Shechina, you're straight with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. You have a direct connection. We see the Mila of Eretz Yisrael. We see the Avir of Eretz Yisrael Machkim. You're in the Merkaz HaOlam, you're in the sense of things, but there is a contract. We are on lease. It's not Poshet that we're here. We're here and we have to pay the price. Yes, we have to pay the price for good and for bad. We have a rental contract that we have to keep up to. As the Ramban writes in Bereishit in Parashat Yotet, Dafka over there in Zdom. He asks, why Sdom? There were many people that were acting like Sdom. Sdom wasn't so miyuchad. There were a lot of people that were full of a right. You know what the Ramban answers? The Ramban L'Shitata in so many places, Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael, the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. Because the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael couldn't handle, Oiver Averet couldn't handle, and Zdom was Nehepach. Sdom had to be turned over. The Canaanim were thrown out of here by Yehoshua, only because Nitmalu Sa'atam, they didn't deserve to be here, even though they were 20 times stronger than us. But once the Kadosh Baruch Hu decided you don't deserve to be here, that's it. The Kutim that were put in here were eaten up by lions because they weren't acting appropriately, and therefore we also, when we're here, we have a rule. If you keep to the Chukot, we know that we have to speak to ourselves. We're not speaking to anyone else. We're only speaking to ourselves. And this is what we have to remember and we have to keep to. That we have to make sure to keep ourselves on the contract. You have to pay your dues. We're here on rent. You're not here. You can't do whatever the heck you want. We're here with a certain type of there's a tviyah on us. Yes, the people are Shomrei Torah Mitzvot. Are we doing what we were supposed to be doing? Are we keeping to the land? Is there too much Chilul Hashem? And especially, I madgish Chilul Hashem. The amount of Chilul Hashem, unfortunately, that can be done by people who are religious, that is one of the number one on the list. We said in our Shari Tshuva Shurim, the number one on the list of things that can destroy us, and we have to make sure to keep to all of these types of things. The Or Chaim HaKadosh in the beginning of Parsha Rei connects the psukim, because in the end of Ekev it says Nachlet Haaretz Kol Makom Asher Tidrach Kaf Reglechem Bo Lechem Yiyeh. It says over there that you will receive the whole entire land; it will all be yours. Everywhere that you step will be there. And then immediately in the beginning of the next Parsha, Rei Anochi Noten Lifnechem Habracha Ve'Haklala, says the Or Chaim HaKadosh. He says it's a beautiful land. It's a Nachlet Hashem, but you should know sometimes it's bracha, but sometimes it's klala. Meaning, gufa, by being in the land of Eretz Yisrael, it could be a bracha and it could also be a klala. That itself can be. When, says the Or Chaim HaKadosh, if you're asher tishmu, if you listen to what I have to say, it's a bracha. V'im loy tishmu, then lo aleinu v'lo aleichem. It's a klala. It's something that can go and be used against us. Shebe'emtza'atam, I'm reading to you word for word from the Or Chaim, yitkanu bechem ha'umat, the umat will be jealous, will be upset at you. They will be upset at you. They will not be happy with you. V'yavdu etchem, and they will destroy you inside of your own land. B'nekama gedola, I read to you word for word from the Or Chaim in the beginning of Parsha Rei. They will destroy you in your own land. B'nekama gedola, because if you're not keeping to what I'm telling you to keep to, if you're not trying to keep a Torah-dika world, a Torah-dika Eretz Yisrael, to keep it to the way it's supposed to be, shebe'emtzatu yitkanu, the goyim will be upset at you, and they will take care of you, and they will chas v'shalom lo aleinu. They will go and bring the klala instead of the bracha. This is the yesod, this is the message that is being thrown at us in our face, and it's thrown to each and individual of us. We don't make any haflayot, any differences, any stereotypes, but we all have to know and take the message that when the Kadosh Baruch Hu sends us messages like this, as we spoke out in the past already, this is a message that's clear as day that it's only from a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu is telling us, don't be samech on yourself. Eitz Sarah Hila Yaakov, as everyone's mentioning, but don't forget the end of it. From it, that Sarah itself will be the point of Dukuri. You know why? From it itself, it's an Eitz Sarah, but the place itself will be the point of Yeshua. You know why? Because it will be used as a stepping stone, as a lesson. It will be used as a way to graduate and move to the next step, to realize that we are under the shlita, under the credence of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. We're only here because the Kadosh Baruch Hu lets us live here. We're learning how to pay rent, and I'll end with the Chofetz Chaim. The Chofetz Chaim says an incredible thing also in the beginning of Parashat Ekev. This is the beginning of Parashat Ekev. Over there he's referring to the fact that that the idea of Yisurim, that when people go through, he says, not only when a person in Lo Aleinu gets killed, but even when he goes through any type of Yisurim, for the sake of Kiddush Hashem, but when he does that, it brings you up another darga in Olam Haba. He's speaking about the greatness of Olam Haba, and over there he brings an incredible thing. Over there in the bottom of the Hagah, they bring the Chofetz Chaim used to say, when he brought the Gemara in Brachot and Daf Hey, which is everyone so familiar with, I tell it to people all the time when they move to Eretz Yisrael, over there they bring that a lot of people used to write letters to the Chofetz Chaim and say, we moved here to Eretz Yisrael and it's just not comfortable. We're not enjoying it here. It was much more easier living on the bank, on the Pacific Ocean over there, relaxing on the end over there, being able to be able to enjoy ourselves. The houses were bigger, the furniture was more comfortable. We weren't surrounded by a bunch of Mashugana Arabs at the time. And we're okay. Why do it's difficult here living in Eretz Yisrael. So you know what the Chofetz Chaim used to do? He used to quote the Gemara in Brachot and Daf Hey that says, Gimel matanot natana Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. 3 matanot the Kadosh Baruch Hu gave to Bnei Yisrael. Of course we know what the 3 are. 3 biggies. Olam Haba. Oh, that makes sense. That's a matanat. Torah, of course we know. We've been raised, we know that Torah is it. And the 3rd one, Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is the 3rd one. And all 3 of them, he says, Loi nitnu ela, v'kula noi nitnan ela al yedei Yisurim. Those 3 are only given al yedei Yisurim. Wow. 3 things were given al yedei Yisurim through difficulties, 3 things that can't be accomplished and can be kind of very easily. It kind of bothered me. Why does it have to be kind of with Yisurim? Just let it be kind of like everything else. What's the difference? Says the Chofetz Chaim, they're incredible Yisod. He says every kinyan that you have in halacha, every time you make a kinyan in halacha, the kinyan, the acquisition, is not equal to the chefetz, to the object that you are buying. You can go out and buy a whole entire house, a whole entire mansion, which is worth millions and tens of millions of dollars by making a chazakah. You go in, open and close the door, you make a chazakah, and you make a kinyan on the object by making some type of kinyan. We can be kind of things with malch, you can be kind of things with money, and not always does it have to be you're going and buy yourself a Ferrari. If the guy agrees, you can make a kinyan with $100. You can add him a $100 bill, and you make a kinyan. If ma'od konet or not, ba'al kol panim, you're able to make a kinyan not always equal. And Chofetz Chaim himself brings the biggest of the biggest. Of course, you could be koine and isha with a shavar pruta. You can go ahead and make a kinyan on an isha. You can get married to your wife, which of course we know, all us married men, we all know what a fantastic thing it is. And here you could do it even with a shavar pruta, with such a small amount of money, with a half a shekel, with 10 cents. You can go ahead and do such an event. Every kinyan, every acquisition is not always equal to the thing that is being acquiesced. There's only 3 differences on that statement. There's only 3 things that the kinyan has to be equal and tantamount to what you're doing. And he says everybody understands Olam Haba. I'm not getting Olam Haba for free. For whatever reason the Ramchal gives, but Al Kopani we know Ramchal, the Olam Haba doesn't come for free. It comes equal. The amount that you put into it in this world, that's how much you're going to get Olam Haba. The amount of pain that a person went through here, the amount of Yisurim, it's Nikne be Yisurim, because the Yisurim is equal, it's tantamount to the amount of Olam Haba, which is something that's so self-understood in Torah also. Do you want to be Kohen Torah? If you get freebies, if it's all coming for free, just because you're a super smart guy and it comes very quickly, that doesn't mean that you're going to get a bigger chelik in Olam Haba than the guy who had to toil and harver over it. Things that we all understand. I'm not saying any chidushim. The Chofetz Chaim is not telling us a chiddush, but here's the chiddush. Says the Chofetz Chaim, number 3 on the list, Eretz Yisrael. Yes, Eretz Yisrael. It can't be nikne ela yidei yisurim. The more yisurim you put in, the more of the kinyan you have inside of it. Even Eretz Yisrael, you want to make a real kinyan, it's not going to be easy. It comes with a certain amount of hashka, of uncomfortableness. Yes, it doesn't always come. If it comes too easy, then you're not living in Eretz Yisrael. And this, Rav Hutner has a letter. And one of his letters, and with this I finished, Rav Hutner actually writes in one of his letters, he says, I was in Eretz Yisrael, what a beautiful land in this, but he came back and he left. He says, you know why? Because he said, I was in Eretz Yisrael, I stayed there, I smelled the beautiful air, I was able to eat the food, I was able to see the people, and I was makir its beauty, the beauty of the land. He said, I was there, I stayed there, and I was living, and I was staying there. But he said, I didn't make a kinyan in Eretz Yisrael, because I didn't feel the pain. I didn't go through any Yisurim, and he says, the only way to make a real kinyan in Eretz Yisrael sometimes when it goes to a difficult spot, and I go and I push myself to stay, or I push myself to know that, yes, it doesn't have to be as comfortable, and I teach my children this message, and that's the message that we're trying to bring out here, and that's how Rashi starts the beginning of Parashat Bereishit. The whole first Rashi in Kol HaTorah Kula, the whole entire Chumash and the whole entire Shas, everything. Rashi's of all the Rashi says that we're here on rent, we're here with the Schorah. Baruch Hashem, we're in a beautiful land. We're in a place that people should not be running away to. Everyone from this war should only be coming closer, but we should be coming closer and coming in and trying to do the best we can. Kadosh Baruch Hu should give us a tremendous etzala b'karav b'ezrat Hashem. He should bring back all our shvuyim and all our soldiers, and we shall only be safe b'ezrat Hashem. And it only will come b'schut the shmir to Torah and mitzvah to tape that we will each take on of us all a Kabbalah, something special, something miyuchad that we haven't done until now. To be able to do that, that is the message. To be able to do it goes over and beyond even listening to the news.